I told myself it would be different this time. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly enough to sound reasonable. Going back didn't feel like a decision fueled by desperation or nostalgia. It felt measured, thought through, almost mature. We weren't the same people anymore, I reminded myself. Time had passed, lessons had been learned. Whatever broke us before had surely lost its power. The hook didn't come from emotion, it came from logic. We knew each other. We already understood each other's patterns, weaknesses, and rhythms. Starting over with someone new felt riskier than returning to something familiar. Familiarity masqueraded as safety, and I let that illusion guide me back. At first, it felt calm, comforting, even. We slipped into old routines with surprising ease, like returning to a language I had once spoken fluently. There was no awkwardness, no need for explanation. Shared history did the work for us. That ease reassured me. I took it as proof that the past had been resolved. Mini hooks appeared early, though I dismissed them quickly. Small moments where I felt a tightening in my chest for no clear reason. A comment that landed heavier than it should have. A familiar silence that settled between us when a conversation drifted too close to old territory. I noticed these things but chose not to linger on them. I told myself that sensitivity didn't equal truth. I wanted this to work, not desperately, but intentionally. There's a difference. Desperation feels frantic. Intention feels disciplined. I adjusted myself carefully. I spoke more clearly. I listened more patiently. I avoided topics that once led to conflict. It felt like growth. In hindsight, it was restraint. The strangest part was how quickly my body remembered what my mind insisted it had outgrown. I became more alert, more careful. Not anxious, just watchful. As if some part of me knew the terrain better than I wanted to admit. That awareness didn't scare me. It felt like experience. We talked about the past in vague terms, never specific enough to reopen wounds. We agreed we had both changed. The word closure floated between us without ever being defined. And because it wasn't defined, it was never tested. Mini hooks multiplied in everyday interactions. I noticed how often I softened my opinions before sharing them. How quickly I apologized for reactions that didn't feel unreasonable. How easily I slipped back into emotional translation, interpreting moods, anticipating responses, managing tone. These habits felt automatic, not imposed. That made them harder to question. I began asking myself quiet questions. Was this adaptation or self-erasure? Was I being flexible or simply familiar? The answers didn't arrive clearly. Familiarity blurs lines. It makes patterns feel normal even when they're not healthy. From the outside, everything looked fine, better than fine. We weren't fighting. We weren't unstable. Friends commented on how meant to be we seemed. That external validation reinforced my internal denial. If everyone else saw improvement, who was I to doubt it? But something subtle had shifted inside me. I noticed I was no longer curious about the future. I wasn't imagining what we might build. I was focused on maintaining equilibrium, keeping things smooth, preventing disruption. That realization unsettled me more than conflict ever had. In the middle of this quiet unraveling, I encountered reflections, not advice, not warnings, but observations about relational cycles. About how returning to the familiar often feels like healing when it's actually repetition. About how growth doesn't always mean change, it sometimes means recognizing when change hasn't occurred. These ideas didn't accuse me, they simply lingered. The emotional erosion wasn't dramatic, it was cumulative. Each small compromise felt insignificant. Together, they recreated a dynamic I had once sworn I'd outgrown. I found myself doubting my perceptions again, questioning whether discomfort meant something was wrong, or whether it was just the residue of memory. Mini hooks became physical. A tension in my shoulders, a reluctance to initiate certain conversations, a subtle relief when we spent time apart. None of these felt alarming on their own. Combined, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. The truth was, I hadn't gone back because I believed things were different. I had gone back because I believed I could be different enough to make it work. That belief placed all responsibility on me, and that should have been a warning. The internal twist began forming long before it became conscious. It started with a simple observation: I felt smaller. Not oppressed, not controlled, just diminished. My world had narrowed again, not through restriction, but through accommodation. In the final quarter of this story, clarity arrived without drama. I realized that regret wasn't about going back. It was about staying once I recognized the pattern. The relationship hadn't failed again. It had simply resumed. The devastating insight was internal. Nothing had been resolved, only paused. The same dynamics didn't need to reassert themselves forcefully because I stepped back into them willingly. Familiarity hadn't healed anything. It had anesthetized my awareness just enough to delay recognition. What shifted wasn't the relationship. It was my perception. I stopped asking whether this could work and started asking why I felt compelled to make it work at my own expense. That question dismantled the illusion faster than any argument could have. The power I thought I had gained by returning turned out to be illusory. The real power emerged when I stopped negotiating with my own discomfort. I didn't need proof of failure. I needed honesty. Looking back, the entire story reframes itself. Going back wasn't the mistake because love failed. It was the mistake because I ignored the part of me that already knew the ending. If this reflection resonates, if you recognize the quiet pull of familiarity and the cost of repetition, there is a thoughtful guide that explores these patterns with clarity and depth, without drama or judgment. You can download the ebook in the description.